Today, I'm going to turn this chart of the Jones Financial Companies L.L.L.P into this chart using Lexchart, and I'm going to do all of that live. The Jones Financial Companies is more popularly known as Edward Jones, the financial advisor and broker-dealer. They've filed their 10K with this organizational chart under the Jones Financial Companies L.L.L.P or Limited Liability Partnership. I've opened the chart up in this separate tab just so we can focus on it more clearly. This chart has three features that make it interesting as an example in Lexchart. The first interesting characteristic is that there are many different types of legal entities on the chart. So it starts with a limited liability limited partnership, which is a gem in and of itself. There are LLCs, corporations, limited partnerships. There's a whole bunch of entities to work with here on this chart. Secondly, it's global. There are entities in multiple countries and states and provincial jurisdictions, which will be interesting for us. And third, most important, is that it has ownership complications, which are quite common in company structures that are quite different from management organizational charts. And this will really highlight those differences for us. So the organizational complication that's interesting is what we call generation skipping in this example. So generation skipping is when you have an ownership line that passes through several layers of the generational hierarchy and shows both direct ownership as well as an indirect path. And we'll be able to capture all of that in Lexchart. Now, hopefully we can also make some improvements on this chart for readability of the chart. We're also going to turn it into data. This is just an image that's low quality, and if you were to zoom in on it, it would just blur and pixelate, and we want to remove that blurring and pixelation. Also, the generational levels are implied, but they are not strictly enforced, and so we want to create really clear hierarchy in this organizational chart. So we can make some of those improvements in Lexchart. So let's get to it. We're going to just begin with a brand new chart, and we'll give it a name. And now I have this blank canvas in Lexchart. There are several ways to get started. I'm going to choose the chart window, which is a great tool. It's quite an innovative way to create charts, but it is useful when you have a structure in mind and you want to just get it out on the canvas really quickly. So you want to create entities and connections and just get a basic structure going. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to create a basic structure, and then I'm going to take a second pass and add a lot of the metadata that is rich about this chart. But let's just get the basic structure out there. So when the chart window opens, it focuses on this center box, and it wants you to get the first entity on the canvas. And so you can start anywhere you want because we're going to be able to navigate up and down the chart from in here, but we're just going to begin with one, and I'll start at the top. Now, I'm going to use the entity names without the abbreviations at the end because I'm going to use them in a different way on the chart as we go through this development of this organizational structure. So I've got Jones Financial Companies, L.L.L.P. So let's begin adding the direct subsidiaries of this entity. And in that case, we're going to follow this line, which goes all the way down here to this leasing company. And then we're going to take the next line, which seems to go into this JFC holding. And then this next direct line. Now, we have these basic direct relationships, but we need to add some of this structure. So we want to go into JFC Holding Co. and add these two entities here. Now, the chart window allows you to navigate through the chart without ever leaving this window. So what we want to do is put JFC Holding Company in focus here, and you can hover over these cards to bring them into focus. And we're just going to click on JFC Holding, and it will move to the center. And now I can add. So I've added those two subsidiaries. But now we need to deal with this wrinkle where LHC is an owner of EDJ Leasing, which is also a subsidiary of the Jones Financial Companies, the parent entity. So we could do that really easily. We're just going to move LHC to the center and say, who is the subsidiary of LHC? Well, that entity is already in our list, so we can actually just come down here and choose it. And we've created that relationship. And I can see in the background, I'm using curved connectors. We're going to switch those to elbow connectors and then open the chart window back up. And we now need to create a subsidiary for EDJ Holding because it owns some percentage of Edward Jones proper. So let's go into Edward Jones proper in this case, and we're going to add a parent this time instead of a subsidiary. And if you need to search, you certainly can. Just start typing, and I see I have EDJ Holding Company right there. So I've created those relationships. And now the trust company and Olive Street don't have any subsidiaries, so we're sort of done with this top layer. Now what we need to do is go add the subsidiaries to Edward Jones here, and we already have Edward Jones and Company in focus. So let's start with Passport Holdings. And then you'll notice Passport Research is a direct subsidiary of Edward Jones. So we'll just say but Passport Research is also a subsidiary of Passport Holdings. So we're going to put Passport Holdings there and search for Passport Research. And now we have both that direct, we have both of these lines created. Now we need to go back to adding some of these direct subsidiaries here. So we have the basic structure and organization of our chart, and sometimes the automatic layout chart is considering millions and millions of possibilities of how to lay out the chart, and it's going to choose among the best. Sometimes there's one, sometimes there are several that qualify, and you can often toggle between the different layouts by simply switching between manual mode and automatic mode, and it will relay out the chart for you, and you can cycle through iterations that are produced by the algorithm. So there are a number of things I see that I can just clean up really quickly. I want to clean up this typo, so I just double click on that entity, or card as we call it in Lexchart, and I'm just going to capitalize the I there and choose save. Now some of these names are quite long and I've abbreviated them at some level, but I can take some of these long ones and just reduce their size a little bit, and it will tighten up the chart for me a little bit. So I'm just going to multi-select those and just take that font down to medium. And those are a little bit smaller. The other thing I can do to tighten up the chart if I want is I can just globally reduce the space and tighten up the chart a bit. And then we'll do manual mode at the end and make some fine-tuning adjustments to the layout if we want. Now, I said there was some data in each of these that made them pretty interesting. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in, to the extent that we have the information here or can infer it, we're going to add metadata to each of these cards to show on the chart that will give us a little more structured information. So we'll start with Jones Financial Companies. And the first one of these, we've got to indicate what the label is, but you'll see in a moment that the labels can be reused throughout the chart. So I'm going to say we have a type, and we're just going to say LLL. And over here, this is what we call the data side of the entity window. And this is going to give us, or the card window, this is going to give us the ability to add additional data about the Jones Financial Companies. I can also change the name if I need to. But we're going to add a jurisdiction as well. And in this case, it's Missouri. And if you had a lot of multiple jurisdictions, you could do something like this if you wanted to, or just do the state name if that's what's helpful to you. And you'll see that over here on the right, we have the design portion of the card window, and it's going to show us a representation that we can interact with. So I can make changes like change the font and position. So for example, I'm going to select the data side of this, and I'm just going to write justify it, and you'll see what that looks like in a moment, and we can make those changes to all of the cards or some of them. You have quite a bit of formatting control. We can also change the color and layout. We're not going to do any of that just yet. I just want to get this chart framed up for us. So here we've got the financial companies, but we want to add this other entity information about each of these things. So we'll come to the trust company, and notice that when you click in the label, your labels are already here. So I can just say the type is, and I can choose the jurisdiction, which does not say, so I'm just going to say U.S. As my jurisdiction since it's federally chartered. And we'll save that. And you'll notice that the formatting is a little different because I didn't choose the same formatting positioning of these labels, but we'll go back and clean all that up in a design step. So we'll come to Olive Street. So now we have metadata in all of our cards. We have the type and the jurisdiction, but the layout of these is a little different, and we want them all to look like this top card here. So I'm just going to come to select all cards, and then I'm going to choose edit. And this is going to let me edit the design globally for all of them. So it just has generic data here because I'm only focused on the design elements. And I'm just going to click the data and move it over here and save. And now they're all formatted in exactly the same way. So I have the basic chart. I have quite a bit of metadata here. And we could actually make that a bit larger and more readable. So I will just repeat that again. You can also select all the cards this way, which is the edit button, and we're going to select both of these. I just hold Command or Control depending on your operating system to select both of those, and I'm just going to make the text a little larger for us as well. So now we have those labels and data. So you can achieve a variety of formats. We have other videos on how to do some of the nuanced formatting control about individual cards if you want. But we're just creating this basic structure for the Jones Financial Companies L.L.L.P. So now we've got data in our cards, and now we want to add data on the lines, these percentage ownerships or percentage of interest in each company down through this chart. So the first thing I'm going to do is expand the spacing a little bit. So one of the nice things about Lexchart is that it's an infinite canvas, so you can scroll in and out, and it's always pixel perfect. So unlike the image that we started with, it's in the 10K that pixelates when you zoom in, you can zoom in and out in Lexchart, and it will always be crystal clear at any scale, no matter how large your chart is. So the first thing I want to do is I'm just going to expand some of the space because I can just tell that some of these gaps won't be big enough, but we'll lay out some of this data on the lines, and then we will be able to format those as well as we see fit. So right now I've got these charts. There are lots of lines sort of going over the top of each other. This, by the way, is one of the reasons sometimes the curved lines can be nice for you because they will more clearly separate what's going where, but a lot of people prefer the more traditional elbow shapes as well. So it's just a matter of taste and what your objectives are. So we want to add some of these percentages on the lines. Now, when you have a large chart like this, sometimes it can be difficult to select or know exactly what relationship you're working with, and that's true in any application, but Lexchart makes this very easy. I'm actually going to open the search panel, and each individual card is listed for me here. I can click over here and highlight it, and I can even double click, and now I have full access to all the menus to manipulate this particular card, but I can also do that for links. So each pair of those relationships is available to me here. And by the way, it's also searchable. Here are the Jones Financial Companies relationships that I want to work with. And the first one I want to do is this leasing company here where it's 90% limited partner. So I'm going to come and select this line here, and then I can actually just double click on it if I want, and I'm going to add labels and data to the line. So this is what we call the link window. So this, again, is very similar to the card window. On the left, you'll have data about the line, and then we're actually going to be able to design what that looks like. So, but let's start by saying, we're just going to say 90%. Now, I could also do something like this and indicate this limited partner. If I zoom in, you'll see where it says limited partner here, a little bit blurry there, but that's what I'm trying to replicate here with this layout. And so I can just save that link, and Lexchart will just place that on that line right there for me. And again, I'm going to always be able to move to manual mode to make some adjustments, and there are other sort of canvas level adjustment features we'll talk about here in a minute. So let's go back and look at the financial company. We want JFC Holding, just this next one here. And this one just has the interest. So I'm just going to say 100% and save that there. So I have my basic chart structure with labels and data on the lines as well as in the cards or legal entities. But I want to make some adjustments here. Some of these are a little cramped. There's some overlapping. So I'm going to make those changes, and then we'll make some design improvements as well. So I'm just going to switch to manual mode, which is this layout button here. Switch to this pencil, and then I can grab each of these elements and just give them some adjustment or room to breathe on the chart. And we'll just pull these down here and over here. And if you're not clear sort of where the connection is between a couple of elements or where to place them, like I'm not clear, I don't remember exactly which of these this lines go with. So I can actually just double click on this, and it's the Canadian Holding Company and Edward Jones itself. So that's actually this line in here. And so I can grab that. And then this one is Edward Jones & Co. to Passport Research. Now that we've repositioned our labels and data, we also might want to make some design changes to highlight various aspects of this organizational chart. So let's imagine, for example, that I want to take the insurance agency part of the business and highlight that in some way. So I actually don't have inside knowledge on which of these legal entities is responsible for what. So I'm just going to respond to sort of clues in the names just to illustrate the point here. So I'm going to come and select this insurance agency here and here and here. And so if it says agency or insurance, I'm going to assume it has something to do with an insurance agency. And now I want to highlight these a little differently. So we're going to come in and we'll make them red as a border, and we'll make the text red as well. And what I also then want to do is highlight some of these lines that are exclusively among the holding companies as red. And I could, even if I want, make them dotted as well. So maybe for some reason I want to highlight the paths of relationship amongst the insurance and agency companies here. So we're going to make those red and dashed as well. Oops. And that one I'm not highlighting because it is coming from Edward Jones proper. And again, I can always look at the curved lines and see what that does for me There are some cases where the curved lines are clearly superior, and other cases where the elbow lines work really well. So it's really up to you. So I've highlighted these, and now let's say I want to highlight the main trading operating companies. Again, no real knowledge here, just trying to make a point that if you knew that some entities were important, and I'm drawing on this now because these two entities here over on the original source have this big extra bold, and we can achieve a similar effect with those two entities. So let's come in here. We're going to make them those borders black, and we'll actually do a couple of different things. Let's apply some formatting. We're actually going to fill them with a gray, and let's make the text white so they stand out as our main operating companies too. The other thing we can do is select these two and edit, and we'll make the name quite a bit larger, just like they've done in there. And so now I have these two entities with much larger names, and they really stand out on the chart. The insurance business is highlighted, and all the others are as we left them. So again, you can use a variety of these design techniques to highlight your chart. But one last thing I'll say about this formatting is sometimes it's useful to color code the labels and data to go along with the lines as well, so you can see what the associations are when you do that. So just to give you an example of what that looks like, I'm just going to come in here and say make all those red. And so now the red lines and the red labels go together if you need. So this is using Edward Jones to illustrate a few things. We have a global business with entities in a variety of jurisdictions. We have many legal entity types, the ever fun LLL.P, but we also have limited partnerships and savings associations, which is a specialty purpose charter financial institution. We have LLCs and limited partnerships. So a wide variety of legal entities. It's global. And most importantly, we have these ownership complications, like this indirect ownership path down here, as well as this indirect path through here into this leasing company as an example, or the path into Edward Jones proper. We have this main line, and then we have these other lines as well. So really complicated structure in a pretty simple chart, but this is very common in company structure diagrams that show a hierarchy, but where the lines sort of skip through those generations, and we call that generation skipping. So I hope you've enjoyed this little tour of the Jones Financial Companies L.L.L.P and its company structure.